Hey all, it's Odd here. I'm not gonna do 91 this week. I just got married. So, here on my honeymoon right now, so taking the week off. But please enjoy this Interstate 90 eastbound Supercut.
Interstate 90 eastbound. Alright, today we are going to talk about the whole of Interstate 90 eastbound, a supercut of the previous videos, where I'm putting all the eastbound videos all together here so you can see it all in one spot. I also just wanted to say thanks so much to everybody for the super likes. Really appreciate it. And we are going to be getting into some of those in this episode. Any 90 requests that I have had, I'm going to cover in this episode. So let's take a look at the map. The map is basically the entire United States. We start in Seattle and we end in Boston. So we are doing the whole entire thing. You're watching Control City Freak. This is the YouTube channel where we talk about interstate highways and the places that they're assigned to go to. If you dig this kind of content, why not give us a like? And if you're really into it, why not subscribe? Yeah, subscribe. And I should mention also, you can request your exit for a super low price of a $5 super sticker. If you've got your exit you want to see in an upcoming video, and remember we're going to be doing 3-digit videos and US highways later, I will put it on and it'll be awesome and I'll have more stuff about you. And if you want to do it just for fun, hey, that's cool too. Right, let's talk about Interstate 90 eastbound. I-90 begins here in Seattle, right near the stadiums. You see we're in the shadow of the Seahawks home, the site of the former Kingdome. We see where there's a sign for 90 and 5, use right 2 lanes. We get on that ramp and we are right next to the Mariners Park here as we head up to this ramp, and at the top there's a stoplight and you turn left and boom, you're on I-90. Here's what it looks like. We have a 90 reassurance shield right there, and we are going to be meeting I-5 right from the jump. So we see 5 North Vancouver, BC, 5 South Portland. As we move over, we get a great view of the Seahawks Stadium here, along with the Seattle skyline. So quite lovely. Looks a lot better than the old Kingdome used to. Seen a game there, and whew. 5 South Portland right here. And after that we get a left exit for 5 North Vancouver, BC. So solid there. Here's a look at the 5 looking south as the 5 moves its way onto Tacoma and Portland and Los Angeles and Tijuana. Interchanges from 5 make up kind of the through line of I-90, so the original part of I-90 is kind of merging with the I-5 traffic right here. And we see we are on 90 East Spokane, all lanes, and we are on Spokane the whole way pretty much. We cross the floating bridge over Lake Washington, so we see Bellevue, Washington there in the distance. And now we're meeting the 405 for Everett and Renton. Makes sense here, Everett, fairly major kind of Seattle satellite city, and we're not signing Tacoma because you would have just stayed on 5 if you were going to Tacoma, so we're getting Renton here. And at random interchanges we get 90 West Seattle, 90 East Spokane. Here's an early mileage sign on I-90. We get Snoqualmie Pass in 25, Ellensburg 82, Spokane 250. Perfectly done there. And we head into the mountains, the Cascades here, pretty much right as soon as we get out of Seattle. And we've got this Ellensburg travel time digital sign, so that's cool. This is kind of what Snoqualmie Pass looked like one of the times I drove across it on the famed trip with me and 2 buddies. It was horrible weather and we were stuck in a traffic jam on the pass for a good couple of hours. Here we are at actual Snoqualmie Pass at the summit, and you can see up ahead this still says 90 East Spokane. This county line I would assume is the exact peak of Snoqualmie Pass. Usually they have county lines at some of the highest points in Washington from what I understand, and we do see the exit here for Summit. Now we head down the mountain into central and eastern Washington. Here's another snow view from Google Street View from a couple years ago, and we've got the Snoqualmie River right there next to us. Lovely views on this road. It is a beautiful road. Kind of gives I-70 in Colorado a run for its money, although that road is quite a bit higher and you're in the mountains for a longer time than you are here on 90 in Washington. At this random interchange we get 90 East Ellensburg for some reason. I don't know why they have that there. Every other sign I saw was Spokane. We've got this one lone Ellensburg sign. And we continue down the mountain. We're almost to the bottom here. And this is pretty shocking. This is only a few miles past the last picture I showed you, and it's desert now, and we are 16 miles away from Ellensburg. We see we're getting 90 East Spokane, and 82 is signed for Yakima. And we cross the Columbia River. If it's not the most scenic river in the whole country, I don't know what is, but it looks awesome every time we see it. And at random interchanges, we are still on 90 East Spokane. And here we pass through the town of Moses Lake and the Lake of Moses Lake, or Lake Moses, one of those two, I forget now. We meet 395, which is signed south for Ritzville and Pasco Tri-Cities. We're only getting south 395 because we are going to be concurrent with north 395 up until Spokane. And here we are in Spokane, where we now get 90 East Coeur d'Alene, a city in Idaho that is very scenic, probably popular with tourists, so I would say it's a fine control city. Easily the biggest city in Idaho. We pass through a 90 as well. We cross this river and enter Idaho, but this is actually a false border. This river does not make up the border between Washington and Idaho. It just happens to cross the border at the same time as I-90. And in Idaho, we get Coeur d'Alene as the only control city here. Idaho usually has two. Here we meet US 95, the prominent road of Idaho. It's the only road to connect northern and southern Idaho without leaving the state. In Coeur d'Alene, we get 90 East Kellogg, Missoula. So now that there's an out-of-state control city, suddenly there's in-state secondaries that are important enough to sign, according to Idaho. Beautiful views as we drive along this area of I-90 in Idaho. Actually, throughout Idaho, I-90 is just spectacular. And we get a mileage sign here. We see Kellogg 33 and Missoula 161. We pass by Lake Coeur d'Alene in this area. Like I say, very beautiful looking lake, very beautiful looking area in general. But now we are getting just Kellogg as our control city at random interchanges instead of Kellogg, Missoula. So this I don't care for at all. Kellogg is not a big place. Here we are in Kellogg. You see all this urban sprawl here. Yes, we now get 90 East, Wallace, and Missoula. So Wallace, I think, is even smaller, but at least we do get Missoula up there. And we continue, we get Missoula 129, Wallace just 10 miles away now. Here is Wallace. This is pretty much the entire town, or roughly half the town. So not a very big place, but it does look like a pretty town from what we can see here. We're in the Bitterroot Mountains, and we are going to Lookout Pass. This is the highest point of I-90 so far, and right at that pass, we see we are crossing into Montana. Heading down the mountain, we get Missoula 104, Butte 225, so we're getting a second control city already after Missoula. And at random interchanges, it is just Missoula that is signed, nothing else along the way. Here we're passing by the Clark Fork River, which we will follow and cross a few times, and it will actually lead right into Missoula. Downtown Missoula, where we're going to be meeting US 12. 12 East will follow us. And outside of Missoula, we see it is 90 East for Butte and 90 West for Missoula, because we're just past Missoula, so no big spoiler there. This is pretty cool. So now we're getting Helena 107, Butte 112, and that is because the faster way to Helena is not to go through Butte, it's to take US 12, and as we are on US 12 right now, makes sense. And here is where US 12 splits east for Helena, and 90 continues on for Butte. We meet I-15 outside of Butte, so 15 and 90 are assigned for Butte together. 15 south, Dillon and Idaho Falls. I don't love that Dillon there. It's okay as long as they have the Idaho Falls, and I guess not like Idaho Falls is a huge place, but Montana being a little provincial, throwing Dillon up there. In Butte now we get 115 City Center, and that is a tiny 3-digit interstate. Really doesn't even have an exit, almost isn't even an on-ramp. I don't know if I'd even consider an on-ramp style 3DI. It's just so small. On the other side of Butte, 90 and 15 are going to split, so 15 north Helena and 90 east for Billings. Little surprising that we skip Bozeman. Bozeman's growth has been substantial, but I guess also fairly recent. It is quite a big town by Montana standards, so I'm a little surprised that we skip over it. At random interchanges, it is just Billings that is signed here. We're up in the Rocky Mountains, so now we cross the highest point of I-90 on its entire length. And we see Bozeman 71, Billings 213 miles away. Beautiful scenery here as we drive down the mountains toward Bozeman, and we exit at 191 South Main Street for Bozeman. Bozeman is here. I've done this exit before. My friends and I were trying to drive back to Kansas, and Bozeman Pass was closed due to a snowstorm, so we stayed in Bozeman, and it was cool. And now we head on to the aforementioned Bozeman Pass. On the other side of these mountains, we get US 89 South in Livingston, and it is signed for Yellowstone National Park. Now we've got Junction US 89, that's North 89, because we're concurrent with it, 7 miles away. Big Timber, and then finally Billings. We cross the Yellowstone River, and 90 will kind of follow the Yellowstone River throughout eastern Montana, and 94 will pick that up when 94 is spawned. Speaking of 94 spawned, here is I-94 leaving I-90 for the first of, I believe, 6 times. They meet together a lot, or concurrence a lot, and this is the start or end of I-94 right here. 90 East Sheridan. We'll talk about that later. And here we get Hardin 40, Little Bighorn Battlefield 55, Sheridan 124. So Sheridan being signed from over 100 miles away, and it's like 10,000 people, not very widely known, not a major junction of any type. So I can't agree with signing Sheridan. They'd have to have something better they could do. Casper, maybe? Cheyenne? Denver? At random interchanges, it is just Sheridan that is signed. Here we meet 212, and it is signed for Little Bighorn Battlefield. This is also the faster way for Rapid City traffic. If you want to go to Rapid City or further east on 90, you're better off going off here rather than staying on 90 itself. And welcome to Wyoming. I feel like this picture in the Welcome to Wyoming sign was taken right here almost, because it just blends in. It's almost hard to see. And in Wyoming, no surprise, Sheridan is the only listed control city. Coming close to Sheridan, so now we get Sheridan 13, Buffalo 49, Gillette 115. Not the best choices there. You could definitely get rid of Buffalo because there's not really much there. It's just I-25. You could have Sheridan, Casper, Gillette here. And here we meet 5th Street, and we see the massive sprawl of Sheridan. In Sheridan, we are signed for 90 East Buffalo, which again, significant for being an interstate junction, but other than that, really nothing to it. And now we're getting Buffalo, Gillette, Casper. That's a cool sign because Buffalo is where we meet 25, Gillette is where I-90 will go, and Casper is where I-25 will go. So I do like that sign. And we're meeting 90. Yeah, we get Gillette and Casper. I don't know if I love this Gillette thing, though. I know it's, 3rd biggest city in Wyoming, but you guys know I don't care about rankings in states or whatever. 3rd biggest city in Wyoming is still like 30,000 people. Casper is the 2nd biggest, and it's nearly twice the size of Gillette, and much, much more famous. So I would probably prefer to see Rapid City here. But at random interchanges, we still get 90 East Gillette. And now we're getting Gillette 66 Moorcroft 94. Ugh, I don't like the looks of that. This is pretty weird. We have this dirt road off-ramp off of I-90. So not often you see a dirt road intersection, and there's no exit signs for it or anything either. Here's what it looks like from above. So we see on both sides we have just a dirt road leaving I-90. If you follow the road that goes off that interchange, you end up at this. I don't know if this is some kind of mine or what they've got going on here, if it's Area 52. Who knows what's going on with all this. We can see that road again from I-90, and we see there's a gate there, so if you were to get off on the dirt road, you can't just turn and go down this random road in the middle of nowhere. So where does it go? In Gillette now, we get 90 East Moorcroft. So, very small place. No reason for that to be a control city of any kind. Wyoming being super provincial here. And look at this. Moorcroft, Sundance, Newcastle. This is making my head hurt. What's up with these places? Sundance, the Sundance Kid is from Sundance. So that's its only sort of claim to fame. It's being referred to in a movie as a character's nickname, but the town itself is tiny. And we do get 90 East Sundance here, so we finally do get 90 East Spearfish, so they do acknowledge that South Dakota exists. So that's nice. Now we've got Spearfish 31, Rapid City 76. So Rapid City, by far the biggest city in this part of the country, only 76 miles away, and this is our first mention of it. So I don't know, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Right here in South Dakota, got this lovely sign with Mount Rushmore on it, no big surprise. And in South Dakota, Rapid City is the final line city right from the start, which does make sense. It probably should have been the final line city considerably earlier than this in Wyoming, but Wyoming don't play that way. At random interchanges, we don't get a city signed, and this is true in a lot of places in South Dakota, and actually these other states too. So right here, we're just getting 2 East 90, so I'm not going to be looking off the ramps too much in South Dakota. And here's a look at the area. This is what it looks like in the Badlands of western South Dakota. So pretty nice out here. Exit 17, we're meeting US 85 for Deadwood and Lead, and I took a look at Deadwood. I've not been there. I've seen the show. Cool show. Looks like a cool little place to check out. Lots of tourism out here in western South Dakota. Looking at another mileage sign, we've got next town, Sturgis Rapid City, so well done there. This is a little weird. This is in Sturgis, but the sign does not mention Sturgis at all. This is the 1 mile away sign, but the sign closer to the interchange also does not mention Sturgis. Maybe there's some Sturgis next 2 exits or 3 exits sign that I missed. I'm surprised that it talks about Deadwood and not Sturgis here, especially since Sturgis is pretty well known for tourism with a bike rally and all. Here we are in Rapid City, and we get 90 East Sioux Falls from this point. I agree. Good choice, South Dakota. And we're getting 190, which is signed for Mount Rushmore and downtown Rapid City. And here's a look at Rapid City from the largest development interchange. So, see quite a bit going on here. Bigger city than really anything else in the area. And on mileage signs, we're getting Sioux Falls on the bottom line, 336 miles away. Good choice. We're approaching Wall, so we are getting wall drug billboards. I probably could have shown you guys a couple in the Wyoming section as well, but I didn't actually know where to look. And continuing along, now we've got Mitchell on the second line and Sioux Falls on the bottom line. No sign of Pierre. I probably would put Pierre there, even though it's not directly on I-90 as the second line thing, but Sioux Falls is the right one for the third line. Here's a look at the Badlands or the Black Hills, not quite sure which or if those are the same thing. And this is around where one of the old Cold War missile silos are. Now we're getting Chamberlain on the second line, so it goes kind of back and forth between Chamberlain and Mitchell and other places, I assume. Sioux Falls always maintains on the third line, so good job. Here is our exit for Pierre at exit 212. It's quite far from Pierre. Pierre is a bit north of here, and we see 90 is closed when flashing, so still lots of severe weather out in these parts. We cross the Missouri River at a pretty wide point right here. Now exit 330, we are meeting Mitchell, which is mostly known for the Corn Palace. And in fact, here is a picture of the Corn Palace. I tried to take one from the interstate, but you couldn't see it at all from the interstate, so I just looked in downtown Mitchell. Not much left between here and Sioux Falls, so we drop down to 2 cities instead of 3. And here we approach I-29 in Sioux Falls. So 29 South Sioux City, 29 North Fargo, 90 Albert Lea, kind of the weird one there. I know Albert Lea is, the junction with I-35, but it's basically a 90-degree junction, and 35 is going to take you to Minneapolis or Des Moines. If you want to go to Minneapolis, there's a turnoff well before Albert Lea, and if you want to go to Des Moines, you're better off getting on 29 right here. So, terrible choice. At 229, we get only South 229 and 90 East, no control city on the pull-through, although it would be Albert Lea, I assume. Should be Rochester, Minnesota. They get a raw deal, Rochester, Minnesota. We're outside of Sioux Falls, and on the mileage sign, we just get Laverne and Albert Lea. These are both Minnesota places. And welcome to Minnesota. At the first exit in Minnesota, we get 90 East Laverne. Not even Albert Lea. We're just getting basically the next town, so I don't really agree with that. And we see Laverne 10 miles away, Albert Lea 155. In Laverne, we get 90 East Worthington, so Minnesota's kind of just doing small town hopping on these random interchanges. However, in Worthington, we do get Albert Lea on the sign, so the big metropolis there, Albert Lea. Albert Lea does live on the bottom line throughout Minnesota until we get there. No mention of Rochester anywhere, though. Here's the exit for Albert Lea itself, although Albert Lea is not signed because of this exit, it's signed because of I-35. We meet I-35, South Des Moines, and North Minneapolis-St. Paul. From this point, those are definitely the correct control cities, but like I said, if you were in Sioux Falls, you would have taken 29 and 80 to get to Des Moines, and to get to Minneapolis or St. Paul, you would have taken Minnesota Highway 60 through Mankato. There's no pull-through on I-90, so I'll show you a little bit on I-35. We get East 90 La Crosse. Also not really great, but better than Albert Lea. And we see here Hayward, Austin, La Crosse. So 3 cities here signed, but no mention of Rochester, the 3rd largest city in Minnesota. Over 100,000 people, the Mayo Clinic. This is malpractice. And from Albert Lea, we're getting a lot of East 90 La Crosses at random interchanges after Albert Lea. Rochester finally shows up here. Rochester exit, 28 miles away. Rochester exit is only like 2 miles from the Rochester city limits and only a handful of miles from downtown Rochester. So why just Rochester exit? Why not Rochester? Here is our Rochester exit, US 63. 52 is also a Rochester exit going the other way. And we see US 52 7, Winona exit 40, and La Crosse 70. All right, US 52 spotting. Always cool when we run into that. In far eastern Minnesota, I-90 finally becomes interesting. It's an extremely boring road, basically from the Black Hills end or so until here. About 500 miles of being pretty boring. We're meeting US 61 signed for La Crescent, which is on the Minnesota side, and suddenly we're on 90 Madison, even though we aren't even to Wisconsin yet. We cross the Mississippi River, although through its lakes and tributaries, we're kind of going to be crossing it for quite a while. We enter Wisconsin on this island, and this is the best Wisconsin can do from what I could find, just Wisconsin and then county line. I couldn't find a real welcome to Wisconsin sign, and I did look for a while. Wisconsin is very weird about signing its state lines. And here we're continuing across the Mississippi, or a lake or tributary or something that basically is the Mississippi, on our way into La Crosse. And here at La Crosse we meet US 53 and we get basically a 90 through traffic kind of thing here. Although on the later part of that exit, now we do get East 90 Madison, which is probably what it should have been since Rochester, really. And here we get West Salem, the next town, Toma, where we meet I-94, and Madison. Good signage here. At random interchanges here, it is just Madison that is signed, so well done. And now we're meeting 94 for Eau Claire and St. Paul, good signage there, and 90-94 east for Wisconsin Dells, which for some reason Wisconsin always signs Wisdells, and Madison. However, at random interchanges, it is Madison that is there and not Wisconsin Dells, so that makes sense. Wisconsin Dells is the second line, and as well it should be, and Madison is the third. We're meeting US 13 for Wisconsin Dells here. And here is Wisconsin Dells in a nutshell. To the left, we see an outlet mall, and to the right, we see a hotel with an indoor water park. Those are kind of the two big things that they got going in Wisconsin Dells. After Wisconsin Dells, we get Portage 18, so that's where we meet I-39, and Madison 46. We're going to be meeting I-39 here, so I-39 is signed. It does not get an overhead sign, but I also imagine not too many people make this movement to get to I-39 since the angles are very weird. It'd be a 270 degree or so exit to get off here. And here is Mathman is Awesome's hometown exit, Wisconsin 60, Lodi, and Arlington. You too could have your exit called out for a simple request and the low price of a $5 Super Like sticker. Yeah. All right, next we have Madison 33, Milwaukee 100, Chicago 181. So Madison no longer on the bottom line. We're putting the destination of I-94 and the destination of I-90 here, which is very good signage indeed. In Madison, I-39 and I-90 are signed for Chicago and 94 for Milwaukee. Well done there. And here's Highway 30 going into Madison, 39 and 90 still for Chicago. We meet the Beltline again for Madison, and now suddenly it's Janesville, Chicago instead of just Chicago. I guess as long as Chicago's on there, it's fine. We'll see if they keep that up. Oh no, what a surprise. So at the next mileage sign, Janesville's on the bottom line. Chicago goes away. We're going provincial and just signing Janesville, which is only 23 miles away. And now at random interchanges here, we get 3990 for Janesville. In Janesville, we get 3990 signed for Chicago. We're going into Beloit at the southern end of Wisconsin, so we get a list of Beloit exits, so that's cool. And now in Beloit, we meet I-43, signed for Milwaukee, and 39 and 90 are signed for Rockford and Chicago, so that's good signage there too. And welcome to Illinois. And toll ahead, the very first toll on I-90, but certainly not the last. In fact, from this point on, I-90 is going to be a toll road more often than it's a free road. And the free pavement ends as we drive through our first toll facility here. At random interchanges here on the J. and Adams Tollway, we get 39 and 90 signed for Chicago and Rockford. I mentioned this sign in the 39 video. This doesn't make any sense at all to me because we've got 20 business for State Street, which will take you to downtown Rockford. It's your fastest way into Rockford. And 3951 south to Rockford, 2 miles, which is a longer way into Rockford. However, when we meet 39, or when 39 splits off, the Rockford signage goes away, and now it's signed for Bloomington, which is correct, but Rockford traffic might be a little confused, I suppose. I guess there's not that much Rockford traffic, and I guess they probably know where they're going. Anyway, 90 East Chicago, way it should be. And we go through one of these famous Illinois tollway oases where you can dine above the interstate. At random interchanges, it is 90 East Chicago. The Illinois Tollway generally runs like this. We get the next exit here for Belvedere and 12 miles ahead the exit after that. So That's generally how our signs work. We don't get a lot in the way of mileage signs on these roads. Here we are in Elgin. I might have missed an Elgin city limits or an Elgin next blah blah exits sign, but like 88 in Aurora, it's weird that we don't get Elgin on the overhead sign. We only get Illinois Highway 31 South. Elgin's a pretty big suburb, so it probably should say Elgin on there. And we're meeting 290 for Chicago and the west suburbs, 90 for Chicago and O'Hare, because 290 and 90 will meet again in downtown Chicago, so this is good signage here. Here you can kind of see O'Hare a little bit out in the distance there, the O'Hare Tower, when we are just to the north of it. And now we're meeting 190 for West O'Hare and 294 for Wisconsin and Indiana. 90 itself keeps Chicago. Here's where 90 is merging into 190 to become the Kennedy Expressway. Or technically 190 into O'Hare is still part of the Kennedy. Here's where we meet I-94. We do not have a chance to exit onto 94. It's a Y junction, and we see the CTA blue line right there in the middle of the Kennedy Expressway. I'm not going to show too much of 90-94 here because I'm going to do that in the 94 video, but first I'll just call out my old exit here, Irving Park. When I was driving in from the suburbs, when I used to work out in the suburbs, I took this road every day. And we're going to be meeting 290 shortly for West Suburbs and Chicago Loop, so this sign is not switched over to Aurora yet, but we do see Aurora later. This part of the Kennedy is so cool. We just have these rapid fire exits like every other block. There's an exit, so we're right very near the heart of downtown Chicago here. And we're going to be meeting I-55 for St. Louis and Lakeshore Drive, 90-94 signed for Indiana. And now 90 and 94 will split, so 90 will go to the Indiana Toll Road. It's the Chicago Skyway here. 94, the Ryan Expressway, later Bishop Ford Expressway, to Indiana. This 90 reassurance shield is pretty wild. It doesn't look to be interstate standard at all. And in fact, the Chicago Skyway itself was not considered to be interstate standard, and for a long time, they stopped signing this road as 90 and only signed it as 290, as in TO90. But now they've taken down the 2's and they decided once again that it is 90. Kind of weird. For a while, I-90 was technically two entirely separate roads with a 8-mile or so gap in the south side of Chicago. Chicago Skyway toll information, $5.90. Oh my God, it's a ripoff. It used to be $2 when I used to drive on that a few years ago. Well, 20 years ago, I guess. I'm old. And we get the awesome Chicago Skyway toll bridge, and the entire Skyway is considered a toll bridge and not a toll road. For some sort of legal reason, the city of Chicago built it. It wasn't built by the state, and the city was not allowed to build a toll road, but they were allowed to build a toll bridge, thus making the entire thing a elevated skyway, and therefore the entire thing was a bridge. So kind of looping around to get to there. This sadly is gone. This is from maybe 2013. This random McDonald's that was in the median of the Chicago Skyway. Pretty funny because it wasn't like a interstate looking McDonald's. It just looked like a, regular McDonald's right there. Here is the actual bridge part of the Chicago Skyway toll bridge as we cross the Calumet River. Makes sense that it's this high because you don't have to make it a drawbridge like all the other bridges on this river. Control City-wise, now we're getting 290, so they haven't gotten rid of the 2 on this sign, and also 280, 65, and 94. Lots of highways coming up. But if you don't want to get on the Indiana Toll Road, you can get off here at Indianapolis Boulevard and not pay a toll in Indiana. But now that ship has sailed, so welcome to Indiana. Prepare to pay another toll. And here is our first toll booth on the Indiana Toll Road. And our first exit on the Indiana Toll Road. We can also see Wolf Lake over here, which is pretty cool. You go through this kind of isthmus over Wolf Lake, this causeway thing. And just to the right side of I-90, we see that there is the South Shore Express, the South Shore Line, electrified rail that goes, I think, all the way to South Bend from downtown Chicago. At random interchanges, it is 90 West Chicago, no spoiler there, and 90 East Ohio. Here's a look at downtown Gary, Indiana. And just a little beyond that, we've got the Gary Minor League Baseball Field, for the Steel Yard, I think it's called, for the Gary Railcats. Now we're meeting I-65 for Indianapolis and 90 East 280 and 94 for Toledo, Ohio. We get a sign for 94 Detroit and Lake Station and East 80-90 Ohio. They don't mention that you can also go west on 80 and 94 back to Chicago. It is possible to make that movement, but I imagine not a lot of people do, so they don't mention it on this side. Here is our toll booth, and this is a pretty good mileage sign. Michigan City, fairly substantial place, 17. South Bend, almost could be a primary, but I'm okay that it's not, 48. And Toledo, 184. This is kind of weird though. US 31 is a freeway in South Bend, so this is a pretty major intersection, but we get get no pull-throughs and not even an overhead sign, just a side of the road sign telling us 31. Even interstate junctions, when we meet I-69, no overhead, no pull-through. Weird. Also, I don't know why Angola is on there, along with Fort Wayne and Lansing. I feel like those two do the job. On the 69 interchange onto the toll road, we get West 8090 Chicago, East 8090 Ohio, so we're getting the same control cities we did when 80 joined. Although on 69 itself, it is signed for Chicago Toledo instead of Chicago, Ohio. And we get to Ohio. Welcome to Ohio. East 8090 Ohio Turnpike 1 mile. We're already on the Ohio Turnpike, but they mean the toll booth, obviously. And here is our toll booth for joining the Ohio Turnpike. And we get a nice 8090 East Toledo. Great to see that. They used to just have through traffic on all these signs, so I'm glad they added real control cities. Toledo is on the bottom line at 55 miles away. And we meet I-75 for Toledo and Dayton. So we're now on 8090 Cleveland. Cleveland 100 miles away. Here in the splits with the Ohio Turnpike in the outskirts of Cleveland. So we see 80 East through traffic here, kind of a throwback to what the Ohio Turnpike used to always do. And our exit for 90 East Cleveland. Wow, only one lane on that exit, kind of a surprise. And here is our toll booth. So I-90 will have basically its longest free section in the eastern half of the US coming up from this point. At random interchanges, here we are at Elyria at the start of this section of 90. It is eastbound 90 Cleveland. And on the mileage sign, not too surprisingly, Cleveland is on the bottom line. We're kind of already in the Cleveland metro area at this point. Moving forward, we are meeting 71 south for Columbus, 90 East Cleveland here, and then we have 490 east to go to I-77. So I-90 kind of exits itself for, I think, the third time in the Cleveland area right here. We're approaching downtown Cleveland and we see a sign for the Browns Stadium, which is on the lake. We won't see that in this video though. And I-90 merges on with Ohio Highway 2 onto the Shoreway. So now we are 90 Euclid and Erie, PA. Euclid get kind of a one-off here. It's a suburban Ohio place. Sort of well known, Euclid. And at random interchanges here, 90 West downtown, no big surprise there, and 90 East for Erie. We split from Highway 2, 90 exits itself once again, and we're now on 90 East for 271 South for Erie, PA. We meet 271, signed south for Columbus, and it is still 90 East Erie, Pennsylvania. Mileage signs make sense. Erie, PA on the bottom line here, or Erie, PA. And once we run out of Ohio cities toward the state border, we get Erie 28 and Buffalo at 120. So Buffalo is signed in Ohio. Welcome to Pennsylvania. At random interchanges, we get Erie on this road, no big surprise. And we get next exit, Erie and Buffalo. No weird random Pennsylvania city that's right on the border. We get Buffalo. And we meet I-79. This is probably the only interstate junction in the entirety of Pennsylvania that has good signage everywhere. We get 90 East Buffalo, yes. 79 North Erie, yes, downtown is north of here. 79 South Pittsburgh, yes. Perfect. Wow. And we got the one kind of bad sign in this section of Pennsylvania, 86 East Jamestown, which I've referenced a number of times. Pennsylvania's kind of just following New York's lead here. And on mileage signs, US 23, Buffalo 76. So Buffalo on the bottom line after we pass Erie. Here we are in Northeast Pennsylvania, and we've got a request from 14 Rocket to show Lake Erie from this angle, and I was going to try and find the factory in Canada that he was referencing that should be to the left of the Holiday Inn Express sign, but I wasn't able to find it no matter how much I zoomed in, but I hope this works for you here. Thanks, I appreciate it. Also in Northeast Pennsylvania, Edwin Paschke, I'm sorry if I'm saying your name wrong, I imagine I probably am, wants to see exits 41 and 45 in Northeast Pennsylvania. So first we will take a look here at exit 41. And that exit 41 is what I showed just a minute ago, where you can see Lake Erie in the background there. And here is our exit for US 20 for State Line, exit 45. This is going eastbound, and just for kicks, I will show you the westbound one here, where now we see Northeast Pennsylvania and State Line both on that sign. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And at random interchanges, also Buffalo. Hey, you're pitching a shutout here, Pennsylvania. Wow. And we cross into New York. We're on the Governor Thomas E. Dewey Thruway now, and we get our Welcome to New York sign. Here's our last exit before the toll. Our 120 or so mile stretch of free road is now over, maybe 100 miles, and we are going back to toll roads now. Open road tolling on the Thruway, so this is what it looks like now. And at random interchanges, we are signed for 90 East Buffalo, as we should be. Now we're approaching the Buffalo area, so we have 190 north for downtown Buffalo and Niagara Falls, and 90 is now going to be signed for Albany and Rochester. And it seems on the Thruway they pretty much always have 2 listed. Although when it is 1, we just get Albany and not Rochester. Not sure how I feel about that. I think maybe Rochester should be there if it's just 1, but Albany for 1 is okay too. And we get 290 here, Niagara Falls, and we are getting back onto the toll road because there's a brief free section in the Buffalo area. Mileage sign, we get Rochester, Albany, and New York City. So New York is on the bottom line because the Thruway goes there. I-90 itself does not go there. I think this might be better as Rochester, Syracuse, Albany, but I do understand why the Thruway would want to have New York City as the final city here. Although there is actually faster ways to New York from this point. Meaning 490 for Rochester. This is a pretty big interchange because this is the main road to Rochester, and we don't get an overhead sign, so I don't like that at all. Weitmar 448 wanted to see exits 46 and 47 in New York State, so we are on the Thruway here. We'll take a look at the exit for 490, and then we will also look at the exit for 390 in the Rochester area. Thanks a lot for the support. And that seems to be a theme on the Thruway. We meet a lot of interstates on the Thruway, but almost all of them just have signs to the side and not overhead signs. So I think that is something that they could improve in New York State. At interchanges here, it is 90 East Albany coming out of Rochester. And good sign here, Syracuse, Albany, and New York. Now that we've established that New York's always going to be the last one, this is the way to go. And here's the other side of 490, signed for Rochester, although I can't imagine anybody would come all the way out here and then loop back to go on 490 for Rochester. And now we're meeting 690. Once again, no overhead signs. Again, that's going to be a theme. And we've got 690 for Syracuse here. Even when meeting a 2-digit interstate, a major 2-digit interstate like I-81, I-81 does not get an overhead sign. It's very weird. I-81's like the 11th longest road or something like that. And we get Watertown and Binghamton. No mention of Syracuse, and this is the closest exit to downtown Syracuse. And now we've got 481, future I-81, and it is signed for Syracuse, even though we're already past Syracuse at this point. So that's a little weird. Now we get Utica, Albany, and New York. So, well done here. New York State's top line on the Thruway is the city that would be the bottom line for most states. So that's kind of cool. This Utica interchange is wild. We are in between the carriageways of a state highway and sort of 790 right here. So pretty interesting. So we see stuff going on that road, but on the Thruway itself, there's no exits right here. We do eventually have the exit for 790 and State Highways 8 and 12 for Utica. After Utica, we switch to a 2-city sign. We no longer have 3 cities on the sign. We only have 2, Albany and New York. And now we're meeting 890, a lot of 90s in New York State. All of them, in fact, I think. It is signed for Schenectady. Now we get 88, finally a sort of overhead sign because they put this one on top of a bridge. And 88 is signed for Schenectady, Binghamton. But really, it's because State Highway 7 is going to Schenectady and 88 is going to Binghamton. And here is meeting 890 once again, looping back for Schenectady. So again, you probably wouldn't be taking this way. You would have taken the original one. And now we are in the Albany area, so we have our split with 87. So exit only, we've got 87 for Albany and Montreal, southbound 87 for New York and Boston. They put Boston on that side. I looked at it on Street View, and taking that way on the Thruway versus taking 90 through Albany takes the exact same amount of time. But the Thruway just wants you to keep paying tolls. They don't want you to take the free route through Albany. They want you to take the toll route. So it's a little fishy there. Literally, as soon as you exit the Thruway, we are now on 90 Albany, Boston. So Boston does show up there once we're off the Thruway. And we see 87 for Albany International Airport and Montreal. Here we're meeting 787. It is for downtown Albany. So we see South 787. And 90 East is now signed just for Boston. So sensible there. As we cross the Hudson River, here's a look at downtown Albany from I-90. We see there's that one strangely tall building that's way taller than any other Albany building. And our next mileage sign, we get Hudson 28, Boston 163. So Boston on the bottom line, good. And here's where we're meeting the Thruway connectors. So we're getting 90 East for Boston, and 287 for New York that way. You can go 287 for Albany that way as well. We are going to be getting back on the Thruway and paying tolls once again for the remainder of this road. Kevin B wants to see the exit for Berkshire Connector, and this is the exit for the Taconic Parkway. So here is that exit off of I-90, and thank you so much. This section of the Thruway is quite nice, the Berkshire Connector. It's a little toll road that's not the main part of the Thruway, but it connects to the Mass Pike. And Massachusetts welcomes you. We finally get to our final state of I-90. At random interchanges, we get 90 east for Springfield and Boston, so as long as Boston's on there, that's fine. And on the mileage sign, we get Springfield on the second line, Boston on the third. Perfectly done. Here's what the tolls look like on the Mass Pike. So we see it is 30 cents right here if you have an easy pass, or 60 cents if you don't. And there are lots of these. I didn't take pictures of all of them. Meaning I-91, and it is signed for Springfield and Holyoke, and 90 east now for Wester and Boston. So well done. We passed 391 in this area, and we have no exit for it. Here's a view of it. This is pretty common on toll roads. Sometimes you just don't have intersections with the other interstates. And now we meet 291 for Springfield and Hartford, Connecticut, and we are still 90 Wester, Boston. And now we get Sturbridge, which is around where we meet I-84, Wester, and Boston. So well done. Here's our intersection with I-84, signed for Hartford, CT, and New York City. Almost surprised they don't have NY City, NY, since they seem to like put the state abbreviations on everything. And here in the Wester area, we are meeting 290 and 395, which is a interesting route. So south of here, it's 395. North of here, it's 290. But I think it's all the same road. I don't know why they don't just name it all one or the other instead of have it change numbers at I-90 here. Interesting mileage sign here, 495, 95, and Boston. Now at 495 we're getting Portsmouth for northbound, so that makes sense. Taunton, I don't actually know where that is, but it's a 3-digit road, so that's fine. And 90 now signed for Framingham and Boston. Since there's no other big cities between here and Boston, we're getting a suburb. And now we meet 95, which is kind of the inner beltway loop of Boston, and it is signed for Portsmouth again and Providence. So that is good signage there. 90, now we're getting Boston and Logan Airport. Pretty much always two in Massachusetts. Here's our exit for Cambridge, and we see we are still getting Boston and Logan Airport as our control cities. We pass right by Fenway Park, and that's pretty cool. We are super close to it on I-90 here. And I got up on the overpass bridge. This is the Big Poppy Bridge, and we can see a pretty good view of the Boston skyline and Fenway and the Mass Pike. So pretty cool. I've been in this area only one time. The Sox weren't in town at the time, so I didn't see a game. Would definitely love to see a game there sometime. It would be pretty nice. A lot of I-90 in downtown Boston is going to be underground. I think this had a lot to do with the Big Dig here, so here is where we first go underground. And we do get some pretty good views of downtown Boston as we skirt in and out of tunnels here. Now we're meeting I-93, which is signed north for Concord, New Hampshire. That makes sense. And south for Quincy. I don't know about Quincy. I feel like you should probably just go with I-95's control cities south. Go with Providence. 90 east now for South Boston and Logan Airport, because we're already past downtown Boston. And here we go into tunnels in the I-93 area. We resurface one more time, and now we're getting just Logan Airport, 1.25 mile. Here in the Ted Williams Tunnel, we see we will soon be on State Highway 1A going through traffic here, and Logan Airport exit to the right. And in fact, once we're above ground again, this was 90, and then we get this first sign here for North 1A Revere. So we get... All right, let's talk about Todd's the way it should be for all of eastbound I-90. It's quite a slog, the whole thing. Okay, for all of eastbound I-90, I'm going to say it should be Spokane, Coeur d'Alene, Missoula, Butte, Bozeman, Billings, Rapid City, Casper, Rapid City again after that exit, then Sioux Falls, Rochester, Minnesota, Madison, Rockford/Chicago, then just Chicago, Indiana, Toledo, Cleveland, Erie, Buffalo, Rochester, Albany, and Boston. And for reasoning behind any of that, feel free to watch any of the earlier videos about these roads. Thank you so much for watching this Supercut episode of Control City Freak. I really appreciate it. My name is Todd, and keep on truckin'.